see. Are you ready, Pepe? Okay. I'll officially call to order this meeting of the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation, and we'll begin with an invocation from Mr. Jackson, if you'll please stand.
May we bow. Heavenly Father, we come and say thank you. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your blessing. Father, we ask that you would guide us and direct us as we sit on this board and make it better for the city of Turtle. Be with us in what all we do. Bless us and bless this city. All this we ask in that Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. If you'll join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. I don't believe we have any remarks from visitors this morning, so at this time I'll ask you to review the minutes from our prior meeting, and I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Kegris. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Jackson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Oh, sorry. We also have minutes from the May 21st meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
The only correction I see on that is that Charlotte Mitchell was not in attendance.
Thank you. Any further comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Heisel. Thank you, Ms. Kegris. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. At this time, I'll call on Raylan for our financial report.
Good morning. In your packet, you have all of the expenditures since our last meeting. Just a few highlights. After our meeting today, your summary will start to include some of those fiscal year 25 budget requests. On your facade reimbursement program, just an update. We do have a new tenant for the Wells Fargo mini bank. It is, I'm going to completely mess this up, Panadera Abuelto. This will be their third bakery. They've got one in Box Springs and also one in Mesquite. And so I have talked to the owner and the tenant, and hopefully they will be in the next 30 to 45 days, which is really good. On Anderson Griffith, I was originally going to very sadly announce that the windows were not going to be here until July, but they're here this morning. So now we're shutting down Adelaide and we're installing windows today, which is really good news. Development partnership, we will have a contract date of July 1st that has been sent to the property owner with the expectation of the time clock starting on that date. That is your Pena development project.
Food hall.
Food hall.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Park capital improvements, just a little bit of an update on that. I will be working with the Public Services Department to get y'all the bids and final contracts for y'all to review. I promise to have those to you during your July meeting. My goal is that we decide what it is that you want to cover, total budget-wise, and then we'll look at a contract start date as soon as school starts. So based on the school start date, we'll go ahead and get everything demoed and have that done. So I will have a full update for you during our July meeting. So moving forward, what we'll do is we'll take recommendations and requests from the Public Services Department and then also the Park Board. I'll go and present to the Park Board throughout the year, just progress of those projects. And then I thought that the joint meeting went really well between Paddock and Park Board, so we'll still do that on an annual basis, just to hear from them recommendations moving forward. But Glenn and I will just work together to help coordinate those projects. and I'll just be presenting the budget and updates to y'all, if you have any questions.
A quick clarifying question. So we're waiting for school to start, so the kids can enjoy the park this summer.
Yes.
And then once they're back in school, demo
We'll get
project starts.
started.
Okay.
Yeah.
And quick clarifying question on the development partnership. I recall the construction loan being much more than 500,000. Should we budget the full amount?
So what you'll notice whenever we go into the planning, I only have that portion budgeted through September.
Gotcha.
And then whatever is left over plus what we need is what you'll actually see in
Next
next fiscal
fiscal year.
year's budget.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Raylan.
And,
Downtown landscape is on here.
yes,
Nearing
so,
completion.
well, so just so everyone knows, the planters are not permanently placed, and everyone does know we had some severe weather there for a little while. North Rock actually handled the installation of the planter covers, and then also we received our first shipment of the planters. Then weather went really, really bad. And so due to the equipment rental, the planters are here and they're out of the way, but please don't think that they're where they're supposed to be. Plus, there is another size planter that is due to come in. So I have a meeting on Monday with our parking lot contractors and North Rock, who's doing the landscape at the parking lot. Then we're going to walk downtown core and talk about placement and also the plants. So hopefully by July meeting, we can say, oh, it's done, and doesn't it look pretty? It does not look pretty right now, and we understand that, but we're getting there. So there was.
My mother has already informed me we did not place those well.
Yes, trust me, I have been told that by a few people, and I have lots of pictures on my phone for proof, and so if y'all could help spread the word, we're not quite done, I promise, and it will look better. So, but I appreciate everyone being very patient. Yes, they are. Yeah, the bottom 3/4 of that is water. So, and part of our maintenance contract with our contractor is they will be filling those up during the summer. Obviously, they're checking it weekly, but those will be self-watering. But they're not done. That's just please keep telling people they are not done. Speaking of the projects, the parking lots, we will have construction starting on the north parking lot. You notice they're already moving some dirt. That one will be done. We had to add 2 additional monitoring wells to the south lot. Those went in this week, so the guys will be able to transfer over as soon as they finish the north lot to the south. We originally thought that there might be a little delay, but we were able to get those monitoring wells in time. So within the next couple of weeks, y'all will see a lot of concrete and then trees and everything else. So we're getting there.
Questions for Raylan on the current budget? All right, thank you. All right, I think the primary considerations today have to do with our 2025 capital work plan update, and as a result of that, our 2025 budget recommendations. So I hope everyone's had their coffee and Wheaties this morning as Raylan guides us through this exercise.
Yes, ma'am. So I did print your packets so that y'all have kind of a workbook to keep. As you make notes, this will be the same workbook that we'll come back with next month and hopefully finalized. So if y'all want me to hold on to those or if you want to make some notes. And then I like big paper. So when you go to your 2025 budget, it actually folds out so that you can kind of see some of the planning. Yes. So between these 2 packets and the next 2 items on the agenda, what we'll do is talk about the verbiage, what you want to see in the capital work plan, and then how that's going to relate to our fiscal year 25 budget. So this will be a published update. This summer, we'll be working on website upgrades, especially as it relates to downtown and parks. Right now, we just have downtown, and that's where all the paddock information is. And so I've been talking to Glenn about making sure that we include both downtown and parks on that portion of the website. I have done some drone footage. So we start all the way out at 429 and go completely as far west as the new North Spur project. And then we pick up from Town North all the way out to Arboretum, which is 148. So I've scheduled to do some quarterly drone footage, taking the same path, the same route, and before he goes out, we'll definitely highlight some specific construction projects that are going on. But what I'm really trying to highlight is just the growth and also the projects that we have going on. So it's not a whole lot to look at right now, but I have a feeling in the next year or two that that's going to be a really neat piece that we'll be able to provide. And then along with y'all's 10 a.m. photo with Christina today to finally get y'all's board picture updated, I have scheduled some photo updates with her on a quarterly basis. And so we've got some new downtown photos, we've got some nighttime photos, and so just making sure that we're capturing all of the work that's going on. So in your packet, I put in just a couple of the pages from y'all's original work plan and providing some updates so that everyone can see that each of those, we acknowledge and document the work that was done since your original work plan and some of the projects that have moved forward, especially with the county bond program, just some updates on that. North Alley complete, South Alley, of course, is part of the Chrissy, your potential new or expanded public partnerships. All of that will remain the same, but I want to make sure that we're documenting some of those projects that we're able to complete with those partnerships. Further in the packet, I've got some more partnerships because I'd also like to add a page for grants. So not just the partnerships with where the funding just comes from these individuals, but also the local matches and the grants that we look at in the future, because I think that'll be an important piece to document. Your short-term high-impact projects, this was just that's page 36. This was just the definition of what that short-term high-impact project is, some of your project ideas from 2019. Next page is your preliminary results and what you decided in 2019 and 2020, which was your neighborhood park improvements, South Alley, and Adelaide. One thing that I would like to include before we officially adopt this new document is our consultant engineer during the August Paddock Board meeting is going to come forward with some of these project updates and full concept plans. I think it's important for us to show in these documents what the concept eventually was at South Alley whenever we talk about roadways and sidewalks and landscape. I want to be able to capture some of those concept plans within your book. Just so looking to the future, whenever it's a full build out, we've got some chronological adoptions of how that started. So you'll see the South Alley improvement concept, also Broad Street, which we were able to include in the Chrissy. And we'll get to start talking about the really, really fun topic of lighting downtown again, since we decided that it was too much whenever we were doing the landscape, but it is something that we're going to have to start tackling whenever we look at construction and build out for the quiet zone projects. So page 50 was your preliminary results from the board deliberations. 51 is just another page from your original document. And then I go to the 2020 short-term list, which is this page here. and I'm just providing some staff updates and board notes. But actually, if you'll flip over to the next page, I have highlighted in gray those items that I feel would still remain on your short-term high-impact options list. I know that we wanted to, or I have heard in the past, kind of stay away from the word land acquisition, that y'all don't necessarily want to be property owners. And so I am making a recommendation that instead of building purchase or renovation, that maybe we just call that building renovation or development incentives. A couple of properties that y'all may get to consider in the future would be the existing 113 Westmore, which is the Chapman Building downtown, and so it's owned by the city, but that could be a development opportunity in the future. And then also, when you look at the Town Square project, we'll have the 100 East Grove, which is the larger Reg Tomlin building that could be redeveloped in the future. So rather than ever using the word land acquisition or purchase, just kind of reworking that, because you will have the ability to provide incentives to city-owned properties. So whether that be the city release an RFP to developers so that they give us ideas for those buildings, and then that turn into possibly a developer incentive agreement or a paddock funding request or a TERS funding request. Just something to kind of keep in mind, that those two properties will definitely be an option for renovation in the future. Downtown parking, you'll get credit for the Moore and Virginia parking. The only other two that we're really kind of looking at right now, and we'll talk more about this in the budget, is the Moore Rockwall lot, and then also maybe some additional parking lots within Town Square whenever we move into developing that area. Neighborhood parks, just documenting that you do the annual funding of the $75,000. And these were just the list of items that came out of the last meeting with the park board. Pocket Park originally was listed as Adelaide, and so I'm just making a note that we could possibly look at some options for Moore and Rockwall. Maybe it doesn't turn into a complete concrete parking lot, but I think there's a lot of green space options there. And maybe we know that we need the roadway coming from Rockwall to get to South Alley, but it may just need to be a roadway, and the rest of it, you could probably get a few parking spaces there, but I'm trying to get a feel for you of if you're more interested in green space planning, or if we feel like we've done significant work in the parking lot department. Signage downtown, we've talked about an RFQ for marketing and branding. Didn't know if skate park, if you wanted to keep that on your list. And then the other items past the gray that I've added is just, we've talked briefly here and there about downtown streetscapes, benches or shade structures, et cetera. There is a lot of grant opportunity with parks whenever you're talking about walking trails and connectivity between parks. And so if the city is looking at a complete comp plan update in fiscal year 26, the last time we did a comp plan or downtown plan or park master plan, those started in 2018 and 2019. And there's been a lot of changes in Terrell since then. So I'm just calling around, kind of trying to figure out what the budget would look like. We don't need a brand new park master plan, because a lot of the park space that would be added to our master plan actually is coming from our developer plats, because this is donated land, things that we need to consider for future parks. And so it would just be an update, but making sure that we're capturing those acres that are being donated to the city. And then Your downtown plan is more of an update because we've done a lot of capital improvements. So what is the strategic plan moving forward, which really has more to do with business, recruitment, maintenance, et cetera. I think that your original downtown plan was ideas of how to get everything kicked off, and we've done a really good job doing that. So how do we keep the momentum? So it's really just more of a 5-year strategic plan moving forward. It wouldn't be a brand-new downtown plan. So we'll kind of stop there, and I would like to get some of y'all's feedback on short-term, high-impact options.
When you look through the budget, you see the hundreds of thousands of dollars that's being put aside for downtown, for whatever reason, for whatever the expenses are. And we're looking at 75,000 annual for the park capital improvements. That won't even pay for resurfacing the tennis courts and the video.
So the 75,000 is the number that has always been plugged into the budget. And then what you'll notice is like last year in park capital improvements, you had 300,000 that was dedicated. So you have a blanket 75,000, just like when you go to downtown improvements, there's a blanket 75,000. But based on the projects that you're considering, the budget changes. So what your budget doesn't show is when the paddock initially came together, the INS #1 payment is a $3 million park improvement. So they started out with $3 million investment into parks. And then it shows the different projects that have been budgeted each fiscal year since then. So, it is a balancing act to do the two. I think that the reason you see us being downtown heavy in the budget was because of the loan, the CO money that was taken out initially from Paddock with the $3 million. So it's not tit for tat, it's just, it just appears to be heavy downtown in your budget because it's been based on cash balance and not COs.
And what I recall about that too is, we had strategic, the complete streets was strategic, the lighting in the parks was strategic. A lot of that we had to go into debt for. But then we said, every year we ought to be spending $75,000 on benches and whatever downtown and signage and something cool in the parks. But we spend more than that in both. I thought we would see, and I'm ready to see if y'all are, or what are your thoughts on irrigation at a minimum, the soccer fields, and then there's been talk about softball fields. I have no idea what the irrigation situation is at the baseball fields, but irrigation, I think, is much needed in our parks. And our soccer program is tremendous, largely based on the demographics of our city. And the fields the city does their best, but the fields are in not good shape.
One of the things about irrigation and doing your parks, I come from the city of Garland Parks Department, and we had people on board that we had an irrigation department, we had this department, we had a facilities maintenance department, we had, everybody had a specialty in the parks department. And the thing that Terrell does not have is employees that can do the maintenance. So every time something breaks, like irrigation, we're gonna have to contract that out to be fixed. And you're gonna find, I'm just saying from experience, that when those heads pop up, the kids show up and kick those heads over. And those huge heads that they put in those irrigation, in those athletic fields are very expensive. And the plumbing and the water, everything that goes with it, they're huge pipes and it's very expensive to replace those heads because once they pop them over, they're no good anymore. So that's the only thing that I see. I mean, having beautiful grass is wonderful, but if you're gonna water it, you need to chemically
Well, and I also think that, yes, obviously, that is a huge consideration, but also whenever you're making these recommendations to city council, I think it is, your message as the paddock is you are absolutely behind this project. However, what is the maintenance program on this? Like when we were doing the downtown landscape, me being able to tell you that TERS was funding a contract for landscape, on an annual basis. And so, I'm perfectly good with reporting back to you more like, hey, we'll do this if you'll do this type scenario, and keeping that communication going back and forth. I haven't talked to Percy or any of the guys. I don't know if this is something that they feel comfortable doing. I do know that, if we're contracting out the mowing and things like that with the parks, do those individuals have time to focus on projects like this? I don't know. But it's definitely
Well,
something.
you should be licensed to be an irrigator and do all that stuff, and that's quite an extensive program. That's just my experience. I mean, our irrigation department had 3 or 4 guys in it, just the irrigation, and they were constantly doing that.
I believe it.
It was a constant problem. Because when they pop one head, it's gonna shoot up in the ground, and then none of the other ones are gonna get the pressure that they need, and it's a big deal.
We're working towards now, whenever we write our RFPs, for those capital items, that it includes maintenance scope in there. So if you are the awarded contractor, then it also comes with a 2-year or 3-year maintenance contract. And so with that would be like, the amount of time that you have to respond, et cetera. We can definitely, whenever we release, if we do this, when we release the scope for this project, making sure that it includes all of that. And then that way, the council knows up front what that annual maintenance cost is going to be to maintain that contract with the irrigation system.
Yeah, and when you have issues, I mean, I've gotten calls when they're trying to have a baseball game, and all of a sudden, the irrigation comes up, and we don't know why. So, I mean, somebody has to be on call to take care of those things immediately, so that's something to consider.
Yeah.
I think Patty brings up some great points. I hadn't thought about chemically treating it, but it makes sense. I know once you start to have nice grass, which we're not used to, you got to keep people off of it when it's wet because it can tear it up. I know how we protect the football field or used to before it was turf. But what are y'all's thoughts about going forward with exploring this option and getting more information and presenting it as a consideration for the council?
I have no objection to considering it. Something else we need to make sure we're aware of is, are the water lines out there, the current water lines,
Sufficient.
capable of supporting the system? Because I know when we put in the bathrooms, water and sewage both were questionable. Yeah,
Yeah.
so make sure that we could, our current infrastructure could even support that.
Well, what I can do is I can kind of start working on a scope, put a preliminary budget together and talk to everyone on the city side and kind of come up with a maintenance bubble. And we can just kind of see where the pricing lands. But no, that's definitely something I can get started on and give you some options based on these considerations.
There's a 12-inch line surrounding the school.
And we may need to,
Maintenance of the field, would it be, I guess the city would have to compare, probably have to hire at least 1 or 2 more people to do what Patty wanted done, the maintenance on the field, replacing of the heads and stuff.
Or contract.
Yeah.
To contracting it out for 3 years.
yeah.
What would it cost the city to have additional?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Probably have to go to some kind of school anyway.
Yeah, and I personally, I don't have any heartburn about contracting this out, because what I imagine happens, we hire an irrigation specialist, and then knowing how thin we're running, they're doing a lot of other work. And so when there's an irrigation issue, they're fixing a toilet, and, you know, instead of we've paid a contract that we can use as leverage for a third-party company. So I think it's worth weighing hiring somebody, but let's not rule out just contracting it like we do downtown landscaping maintenance
Yeah.
as well.
Are you interested in looking at upgrading some of the fencing if you're worried about, you know, I mean, right now, everything is kind of wide open, and so do we want to look at some kind of potential barrier fencing with gates? And you know, how do y'all
I think
feel?
we will have a hailstorm on our hands if we limit access to those fields. And I think we need to consider, like, if that's gonna be the result of doing this project, then we need to think about that, because those fields are used constantly. I mean, I haven't been out there at 2 a.m, but I bet if I went by there at 2 a.m, there'd be somebody out there using those fields.
And that may or may not be okay. Right now, the digital sign on the Excel will say fields closed.
Well,
we
and they
would just
put
have to
sign,
enforce it.
I'm assuming they're putting some kind of maintenance or something on it, because they'll have signs that they put out on each of the fields that say stay off, because they're doing something to them.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not people, you know, pay attention to that, at least the effort is made. But I'm with Hillary, oh no, no fence.
Yeah.
You know, at some point, and I don't know if it's this year or future years, I think we need to think about shade structures out there. You know, for,
What kind of shade structures do y'all like? There's a varying, do you like the cloth shade structures? Do you like more of a metal pavilion? Do you, what's your feel?
And mostly just from all the parks that I've been to, whether I'm watching great nieces and nephews play, very seldom are there structures. It's always the canopy
canopies.
type. And I don't know if that's because they're a little bit more cheaper. Of course, I know those have to be replaced. But I very seldom, except around the concession stand, ever see
Yeah.
permanent concrete structures.
I will say, I spent last weekend in Euless, and what I am asking TERS for in the future for Town Square, and this may be a consideration for y'all, is a tree budget. Having shade trees strategically placed makes a huge, it was 90 degrees, but there was a nice breeze, and you're not miserable. And so, possibly, if y'all would want to consider, as we grow our fields and as they become more, especially if you're adding irrigation and we have the lineup of the fields, maybe we start looking at where those strategic tree placements could be. I think that just starting to add some of those natural shade structures would be nice too. And it just shows a more mature park in years to come. So I think that trees could be something also.
That's an investment, 15, 20 years.
Right, yeah. But
lots
my,
of big ones for downtown, though.
but, you know, my goodness, the look of that park in 15, 20 years, I mean, it's gonna be night and day different. So, you know, it's really nice to go to those established facilities who they thought of that 20 years ago, because it does make a huge difference.
I think there are pockets of places where you could do trees, but again, just the baseball fields, the softball fields, the soccer fields that I go to, you usually do not see trees around them. Or if you do, they're very small and away from it, and they invest more in because a tree is, I would love to put trees out. A tree is nice, but how many people can you get under a tree? As opposed to the shade thing with the heat in Texas, and it only is getting worse. That to me is probably imperative for anything else we do.
I'm curious about what the lifespan of the sale things are, though.
about 5 years.
I was also thinking that, if we do a more permanent structure, you paint it over so often too. I mean, I guess if you powder coat.
Yeah, there is.
Buildings, in the past, we have, when talking about the soccer fields, right now, kind of one of the benefits of them is that they move and change. And so we have to think about that too in any kind of shade structure. Do we pick 2 fields that are gonna be fixed and we put in a nice concrete pad with bleachers with a shade structure over it? And then those 2 are fixed and then the other ones can kind of move and morph and change. Because sometimes the fields go this way, sometimes the fields go
Right.
this way, sometimes they use a half field. So that's something to think about too.
Well, I am all about never pretending like I'm the expert in these fields, and we have some really good park designers that we've kind of picked up along the way with developers, and so how about I reach out to them and give them kind of the footprint of Ben Gill, let them know we're talking about irrigation, we're talking about shade structures, and see if we can't put together a plan, and then that way y'all could look at it and go, okay, well, phase 1 could be, let's focus on this area, and then that way you kind of see the bigger picture, and then we can break it up from there.
Can you have them also look at Breezy Hill since those are our 2
Absolutely,
biggest
yeah,
parks?
because
Those are our 2
because of the
biggest parks
parking.
and most used parks.
Yeah, because I had reached out to them to look at, because I know the discussion was the parking lot, and so I want to make sure we're placing that correctly because of where the future growth for Breezy Hill is going to be. So I'll, if y'all want them to also look at Ben Gill, we can do that too. And that's a small amount to pay to make sure we have a good plan.
Anything else on your minds about parks for the capital plan?
I know I think when we originally met and were discussing like the skate park and the splash pad, the splash pad kind of got moved lower. Since that time, I've not had one person in the city of Terrell ask me if we're ever going to have a skate park, but I have had numerous people ask, are we ever going to do anything with a splash, even the small, I mean, Forney has one, it's really small, but if you go out there when it's open, it is kids left and right using that. So I would like to just recommend that we kind of move that up higher in the priority list.
If you want a good idea how much skate parks cost, once again, City of Garland just put one in a couple years ago, so it's huge, it's really neat, but it's huge. You might give them a call and see if
Okay.
you can get what they pay for that, because it is a lot of concrete. Lot of concrete.
Do we have parts of, like areas of our parks that are dead space, that stuff like a splash pad and a skate park makes sense? I feel like we're utilizing a lot of land, but we don't have to talk about it right now, but I'm curious where we could vision something like that.
I think the skate park at Garland, I would say, is 2 acres, maybe,
That's huge.
acre and a half.
That
something like
include
I mean,
parking?
when you consider everything that's involved in the actual skate park, the sidewalks around it, the parking beside, it's quite a big ordeal. It's really nice.
So while we're talking about splash pads, there's two frames of thought when it comes to splash pad. You have a water feature that you let kids splash in, and then you have the bright colored buckets that fill up with water and pour down and have flowers that have sprinkler systems. So just making sure that I'm moving in the right direction. When you look at different locations, just making sure that I know the vision of what y'all are picturing there. I know whenever we talk about like Town Square, we talk more of like a water feature. And so when we're looking at parks or different places, I just want to make sure that I'm always clear on what it is that y'all are envisioning in those parks.
I think when you're hearing conversations in town, you're talking more about a splash pad.
No.
You don't think so?
Well, I mean,
The buckets and the
they want the,
flowers and the-
if you take a kid to something that's squirting up out of the ground, that's about a 10-minute diversion, and then you're gone somewhere else. I don't think that's the ideal of the parents, or the grandparents who have to take their children there,
Well,
grandchildren
I mean,
there.
you're talking about the bigger
Yes.
end. That's where I was, maybe I misspoke.
No, I mean, I could see like downtown doing, and I keep saying the water, because most of the ones I see, there's some pretty something in the middle, and then there's just water that randomly shoots up. And that kind of works as a fountain centerpiece, but also something kids could enjoy.
Right, while
and
parents are
actually some
eating or
adults can get in
shopping
there
or,
too.
yeah.
But when I'm thinking parks, and again, depending on, we're kind of focusing on Ben Gill, but we have other parks that you could do smaller splash with the, not just the water from the ground, that you could do them in, that's a little bit entertaining. I mean, because you can only use it for a certain amount during the year.
Well,
But
and I think if you were strategic, if we got pricing for splash pads and you looked at Kings Creek, Breezy Hill, and Arlie White, like, you know, maybe your smaller community, I mean, Ben Gill's got the swimming pool, so if you're going out there, you're playing pickleball, I mean, there's plenty of things to do in Ben Gill. But a splash pad, I think, is really good in community parks, especially if you're doing more than one, and you're able to, you know, let people travel from their neighborhoods there.
My thought on that, I think Breezy Hill is kind of an exception because it is a neighborhood park, but it also is utilized by a huge number of people.
Yes.
So I would personally be very supportive of looking at that as a splash pad location.
Okay?
On Kings Creek and Arlie White, the people that live there don't want other people coming there, is what I have heard from the people that live there. And so we put an attraction like that, and people are parking on the street in front of their house to get to the splash pad. Again, pitchforks. So we need
So
to,
no fun
Well, I
things
kinda-
at Arlie White or.
I kind of laughed when you said Kings Creek, because they had a splash pad there just a week or so ago. So you might.
So do we want to explore a splash pad at Breezy Hill and then see how it goes? You like it? Yeah?
Parking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a subject at the Association of Retail Park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That definitely needs to be one of the high-impact projects.
Yes. And I have,
We've gotten some land and even some of the people that live around the community.
mm-hmm.
You got picnic tables sitting on land that could be parked there, and we were like, okay. But it has been a major.
So I sent our consultant all of the parcels that we've picked up along the edges, and, but I wanted them to make sure that they planned out, you know, adding on green space. We don't want to take everything for parking, but suggesting where we could start doing the outer lining of the parking. And so I'll ask them to maybe work in a location of a splash pad there. Okay?
But does parking need to happen like this fiscal year and splash pads maybe next
Yeah,
fiscal year?
parking I had put on
Not this fiscal year, but 25.
in 25, yeah.
Because I hate to spend any money on parking from this, but if it's towards a park, especially like Breezy Hill, where it's desperately needed.
Right.
And we want to continue to encourage that use of those parks, and we don't want to make the neighbors upset. That to me is one of the few times I will vote for parking and feel good about it.
Yeah, some of them are fussing because they park in front of their house.
Yeah.
Things posted, they still park.
So on your annual funding, during the meeting with the park board, y'all had talked about court renovations at Arlie White and Kings Creek. I've gotten started on the parking lot at Breezy Hill Park. Y'all had talked about pickleball at Breezy Hill and then monument signs, and those were kind of the key things that came out of that park board meeting.
One of the things, just because I'm out at Kings Creek quite a bit, and when there is, whatever they changed several years ago, the flooding is not near as bad, but that court that we have there seems to be in the prime flood position. So if we're gonna look at resurfacing something, I'd rather resurface it somewhere where it's not gonna be underwater at least
Underwater,
once a year.
think this might be a question for the park board, but I would even be curious to know how they would feel about a splash pad instead of pickleball at Breezy Hill, because we are gonna have, I like the idea of spreading out things we don't have, different, instead of duplicating everything. And so since we are making such a big investment at pickleball at Ben Gill, again, I think that's a question for the park board on what their priorities would be, but it makes sense to me to kind of replace that project.
With a splash pad, okay.
And if a skate park takes up 2 acres or even an acre, I don't know where we have that kind of land.
Well, and you don't see a lot of kids skateboarding around town. So I'm trying to, when y'all were talking, I was trying to think of like, you don't see them in parking lots, or maybe I don't see them anymore, and that's why I don't know.
Well, I know 5 years ago, 6 years ago, every time I ever went someplace where there was a skate park, you saw lots of kids on them. Now, when I see them, it's like 1 or 2 random, kids that are out there. So I don't know if that was just a fad and it might come back around, but that's a lot of concrete to put in some pretty nice land that we have. Because, looking at Ben Gill, when they talked about where they were gonna put in that little park I thought, well, that's kind of a bad place to put it, but now that it's in there, and, because my grandkids have used it several times, and when I go by there, people are always right there, so if we were gonna do anything else, it might be kinda nice to keep it within where that new park is and maybe a little round, because I'm assuming the trees are starting to die and get of an age where they're gonna fall over
appears
on
to
people and we're
be.
gonna get rid of them.
Yeah, it appears to be.
All right, downtown, what projects are on your mind that may not be in front of you?
Are there any more murals planned currently?
The only mural that was not completed from y'all's original list is the one for Houston Smith's building. And we've just been talking about different options for that. One option that came back from the Texas Downtown Association is that more and more cities are painting on UV canvases and having those put on buildings rather than painting directly on buildings. Simply because of what we're so scared of with Houston Smith's wall is the liability. And so we know that we do have that mural. There have not been other requests. Kind of the way that I worded it in your capital work plan and then also in the budget is just that those would come to you as staff recommendations. We'll kind of screen those from the beginning. And, if we feel like we need some additional funding, Allison's done a good job of kind of keeping up with the maintenance, which of course is more of on the city side. We've got some that we're still working on sealing and making sure that we're taking good care of them. But I think as far as like big building pictures, we're pretty full. I would like to present to y'all a couple of ideas when we look at the main entrance coming into Terrell, both east and west. We have the Welcome to Terrell mural as you're driving east through town. I think we do have a really fun possibility of maybe some different things that we could do on these parking lots on this side. If the mural still happens on the Houston Smith wall, I've looked at some lighted signage. I'm trying to think of maybe some photo opportunities, maybe more of like a billboard style, something that could be changed out. And so just kind of keeping that in the back of your mind, I'll probably be throwing out some ideas for that, because I do think that those bookends in the Texas Downtown talked about that is, how are you going to, identify that this is the beginning of your downtown? And so we'll be looking at some of those options. But as far as other downtown, I think y'all have really killed it in the past 18 months. And so letting us maintain this and grow it and work more with building owners and vendors, I think now we're just going to have to keep the momentum going. One conversation that I wanted to have with y'all was, when we look at moving forward on our grant and y'all's reimbursement program, to tell you a little story, we have had 2 investors come into Terrell in the past 120 days. Not that building owners need to sell their buildings, I'm not saying that, but they are not interested in selling the downtown buildings to investors. We do have one that's possibly interested in selling, but they decided that they needed to double the price that was being asked for their building. It's a little, it breaks my heart a little bit because I feel like we're doing our downtown buildings an injustice by not requiring our property owners to maintain them when we know that there are certain problems with the structurability of the building itself. And so for the past several years, we've just tried to love on everyone and make sure that our tenants are happy. The tenants are scared to death that if building renovations happen, their leases are going to go up. I'm scared to death that our bricks are deteriorating and our buildings are starting to fall apart. So we're kind of in an awkward position of we have investors, we've got some momentum, we have investors who know the status of these buildings, know the type of renovation that it would take. We just don't have property owners that are wanting to sell, which is fine. But I do believe that the city, and I've been talking to the fire marshal, because our building official and fire marshal have some real concerns with some of the buildings downtown. And so we are okay. This is a conversation I clearly have to have with city council and everyone else because, and I said this to y'all whenever I first started, if we don't start taking care of the brick and mortar, we are going to be the historic downtown that had to demo existing buildings. I mean, we own one in Chapman, and we know that structurally it has to come down and we have to rebuild it. There's not very many people who are going to be able to do that. So with that being said, just moving forward with the facade, I think that we've done a great job updating the grant applications. I think that the lease reimbursement is a good program to have. When we're talking to these property owners and we're talking to them about the status of their buildings and the real work that needs to be done, you know, a roof repair sometimes needs to be an entire roof replacement. And so are we helping property owners with regular maintenance that they should be doing on their own, or are they actually making investments in their building? And so just trying to get a feel from the board, because this is something that we can kind of filter through in the office and not necessarily bring to Paddock every time. But if you feel like your funds are better used on building renovations and building changes, and if it's just something that you probably should have done and put into your regular annual maintenance budget of your building, that doesn't necessarily qualify for Paddock funding. So I'm just trying to get a feel from the board of how y'all look at that money being spent. And then the other thing is, if we really start pushing property owners to do some of the renovations that we feel like will save these buildings, like we've said, the number one fear is that lease goes up with our existing tenants. And so would you look at a percentage of lease reimbursement for 6 months? Or is there a number in there that you could assist existing business owners if their buildings get renovated? That would kind of help bridge that gap as they move forward.
Well, I'll defer to the real estate expert on this, but where my mind goes is roof is a great example. Air conditioning is a great example. Plumbing is a great example. You're not adding square footage to the building. You're not, it's a quality improvement, but I very much support the city making sure we have safe buildings, that these tenants that have invested so much in their own stores and businesses are supported by their landowners. Where I have heartburn is, no, I don't think the city should pay the landlords more money to fix their buildings when it's the right thing to do for their loyal tenants. And I don't think it's reasonable, but tell me if I'm wrong, that if you get a new roof or fixture plumbing or something to the building, that they can go up on their rent. I mean, you know, I don't want them coming to us to ask for more rent when it benefits the landowner, the property owner, especially if they didn't do the work, they didn't make the investment, if we made the investment.
Yeah, having a roof and functioning air conditioning and plumbing doesn't really add value. People just expect for that to be there. I mean, if you don't have that, then of course it's worth a lot less. But a lot of landlords, they're looking at what it costs them every month to own it, and if they have to put money into it, then a lot of them pass that along to their tenants, whether it be a tax increase or maintenance. So I don't know. I mean, I wish every landlord had a huge, you know, reserve fund to take care of this sort of stuff, but not all do and not all want to. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm all for preserving the buildings, but are we going to become a maintenance fund or are we going to be a renovation fund?
And we had the talk early on about what we wanted our focus to be, and I think in the beginning, we decided just to get the ball rolling and to incentivize really any improvements that we kind of would consider kind of anything that came to us. But I'm good at this point with the improvements that have been made and the investments that are coming in. I'm good with tightening up our requirements a little bit on that. And I think, Matt, we're going to rely very heavily on you on especially the rent reimbursements. You know, if Matt thinks that the rent should be $1,200 a month and the landlord thinks that rent should be $2,000 a month, I don't think we should be spending that $800 to make the landlord happy if that's not what it's really worth.
Right.
Those need to be very special considerations instead of just a blanket. Yeah.
Right. And this is just kind of us talking because if there starts to get pressure out there, these conversations are going to come up, and I just want to be prepared on how to talk to the tenants. I appreciate everything that y'all have done, and like you said, getting the ball rolling and doing these facade grants and doing all of this, but now you're kind of at a position where you have to maintain your investment. You've invested a lot of money in downtown in the past 18 to 24 months, and so now it's more of, you know, if we're going to keep this going, everyone kind of has to step up to the plate. And so, and, you know, we take those hits and we will move forward and working with the fire marshal and the building official. And, you know, and a lot of our complaints come from the tenants themselves. Whenever there was flooding, one of the tenants didn't want to call her property owner. She called the chamber to talk about her plumbing, and because she doesn't feel like she can call her property owner. And I mean, that's the relationship, that's the world that they live in with their building owners. And so,
Is that the result of a poorly written lease? If there was a lease that said that I should have functioning plumbing, I mean, should there be a coaching session that maybe the chamber helps these tenants with when their leases are up for renewal, that you need to be looking for these to protect yourself?
There's not any sort of standard blanket lease for everything. You know,
Right.
Anything could be
Negotiated.
It could be a napkin or a handshake deal. So
Yeah.
a lot of that's going to involve an attorney.
Yeah.
To look
and
over to
and
see
it's
what-
just, it's a really, it gets to be very touchy back, you know, just staff working with this. So I just wanted to kind of have an open conversation with y'all so that I can kind of figure out, you know, what kind of things do y'all want to see? Because I don't ever want to put anyone in front of y'all asking for money or, you know, having a vision of something happening and it not really be y'all's intent.
Something I said to Raylan, but I want to go on the record as saying that if we're going to hold our property owners to a higher standard, then as the city of Terrell, who owns one of the largest buildings downtown, one of two things has to happen. That building needs to be sold to one of these investors that has an interest in making a large investment in downtown Terrell, or the city of Terrell is going to have to bring their own building up to standard, because we cannot ask one thing and do another for any longer than we already have.
Yeah,
Does the city have codes for these buildings?
we do, we do.
What if they're not meeting the code? So are they fine or
So in the building inspection world, it's a little difficult. So fire marshal does annual inspections each year on commercial properties because they're looking for, they have to inspect sprinkler systems, et cetera, et cetera. We've adopted, to help our property owners, we've adopted the existing building code standards. And so what it does is it helps us as the city work with property owners because there's a lot of pre-existing conditions. It's how, you can do smaller elevators rather than, so it's very beneficial. What we haven't done, when there is a new certificate of occupancy, you go in, building official does the full inspection from top to bottom, everything has to check a list. But what we have now are buildings that haven't had new occupants in a while. So other than the fire marshal noting a few things that are considered fire hazards, which, he, of course, addresses those. But, there's just some other things that we have patiently worked with property owners on.
Even though
But,
it's in our building code.
yeah, so, it's a double-edged sword. We want downtown businesses. We want, we don't want the tenants packing up and leaving. We want to help. We want to provide services. But then there comes a point where we're not doing anyone any good. And
JC's question is like, what happens if they're in violation? Is there a fine assessed? Do we lock the doors? Like what? are we
depending
looking
on
at?
the violation, you can lock the door. But more or less, it's, hey, come in, let's work with the building official, let's get some plans together. You need to pull a building permit. We need to see activity. If it's an electrical issue or plumbing, we need your plumber to come and pull the permit. And so that those things can be inspected. It turns into just a commercial renovation project with building permits.
And so, go ahead.
No, we don't go in and offer the money initially. That's something that kind of happens after the fact, because when we're talking about regular building maintenance and when we're talking codes, we are talking minimal building codes, like things, exposed wires, updated plumbing, updated electrical. So, it's more or less items that should be taken care of by a property owner naturally.
So Raylan's gonna need direction from us. When the city code official goes in and cites the building owner for exposed electrical, plumbing, leaking roof, whatever that may be, then get ready, right? Because they're gonna come to Raylan and say, what portion of this is the paddock interested in helping fund? And so she needs direction from us on how to respond to that. What, if anything, in those cases, are we looking to support?
Can I ask how many of our, and you may have told us in the past, how many of our buildings downtown are owned externally and how many are owned by Terrell or surrounding Kaufman County owners?
The majority of your properties downtown now are owned by City of Terrell residents.
Terrell residents, okay.
Yeah, we have one investor and then we've got one separate. But the rest of them are Terrell.
And just kind of generally, let's go ahead and charge at the big issue I see. I'm doubling down on what Tori said about the Chapman Building. And personally, at this time, I have no interest in the Paddock Board funding the city of Terrell doing anything with that building. If we acquired it with a specific purpose in mind and that specific purpose has changed and there are investors that are willing to come in and do something with it, I would, as a Paddock Board member, would much rather reimburse somebody after they've made something pretty than be the project manager myself.
Oh, no, for sure.
So-
It would be a reimbursement.
We started out being like facade improvements. If the citizens of Terrell can see when they drive by what's been done, then that's what we want to do. But then let's be real, we've done some things, we've done some rooftops. What else have we done that you can't see?
And plumbing, we really kind of focused in on things that could stay with the building. Yeah, nothing that could be picked up and moved.
So have we set a precedent, or would we like to change directions?
Well, I guess she was a tenant, though. That's the tricky thing. I'm just thinking of the coffee company. That was, I think, the first time that we did any kind of internal building improvements. And I was just thinking, that came with external renovations as well. Like, it wasn't just something you couldn't see. It was part of a bigger project.
Didn't we do the Jones building?
Next to the bank.
Did we do?
Something ceiling tile or something in there.
On that one.
Did you?
I think Carlton has a thought he'd like to share.
Carlton?
He wants to buy downtown,
Buy the whole thing.
buy the whole
Come on.
All right. Carlton Tidwell, President, Terrell Economic Development Corporation. One of the things that, as you look at either continuing or setting a new direction on downtown, I think you need to know about is, as you know, each year we attend ICSC, which is the International Council of Shopping Centers. We've done that, I'm going to say 20 or 25 years. Sarah, you may know more than I do the exact date, but we usually come back with anywhere from 15 to 20 pretty solid leads on things that we follow up on. From this year's, we are currently following up on 127 leads for Terrell. So whatever direction you decide on, know that the wave is here. We had 4 people in our booth plus 4 people attending meetings, and at times it was just not enough. And everybody, when they came in, they knew. This is one of the fastest growing areas in the United States, and they know that there's place for investment. So I just wanted to make sure that y'all knew exactly what was going on in the last couple of months when you start thinking about a direction of downtown. So
That's
thank
very
you for letting
helpful.
me
Thank you.
comment.
You know, I think kind of the takeaway from that is that this is the catalyst for change. We don't have to keep doing what we've always done when we're going to have maybe more asks, bigger asks. I think it's okay that we maybe helped start some businesses in the right direction, but that's very helpful information. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, on the music coffee shop, the interior work we did on that was in order for a new business to obtain a CO, correct? So this wasn't for someone to continue staying in a substandard spot.
Good point.
So I think that was the exception on that one. But no, kind of, Tori said, I do like the idea of us focusing mostly on what is visual on the facade, but a case by case would be for a new tenant obtaining a CO coming in. And if they can't obtain a CO and nor can the landlord or the tenant afford to do that, then we can look at that and participate in.
Okay. It just helps every now and then.
say that they can't afford it because
No.
everybody's
Well, no.
Yeah,
I just mean that, I mean, like, you know,
It-
extenuating
I'm sorry,
circumstances.
I just, yeah, if a landlord doesn't have that in their cash reserves, nor does a tenant have it in their plan for it, then that could be something that.
it's just beneficial every now and then for staff to have this conversation, just so I can make sure that, we're communicating back and forth and you are getting the types of projects that you need.
So this is kind of where, and this is kind of a personal input. and I'm trying to keep the board in mind as well. When I first started, we talked about the facade program. I was like, well, how nice that it would look nice. And then we have the back of a building fall down. We have another one fall down. We put a lot of money into this building right behind us. So to me, the facade may be later down the road, just because we have exposed such structural issues. And that's where I felt comfortable when we voted on the Jones, where they were trying to get a viable business in there, but because of stuff on the inside, they couldn't. And I think it's rented now, isn't it? I believe when I drove by there, the same thing with the coffee company. So and that's also why I asked who owns our current buildings. If it was all investors, I'd be saying no. But because we've had downtown property owners, whether rightfully or wrongfully, have not made decisions to upgrade their building, and there may be good reasons for it, because we're trying to bring that traffic into downtown. We want to make sure the buildings are safe, and as long as it's like Kaufman County owners, and that's a different type of investment to me. If it was an investor, and most of them were investors, yeah, I'm not really
You know what
excited
you
about
got
doing
yourself
that.
into.
But I
Yeah,
know I'm
absolutely.
rewarding
Yeah.
somebody who has had a business, and they have hung on through how many years of when there was hardly any traffic downtown. So I feel much better kind of looking at it that way. But again, on a case by case, if somebody's bringing in a new business, and we need to help update it, so I just don't want the buildings to fall down around them.
Well, and I think what percentage of the project they expect us or are asking us to fund is also a huge consideration. If you're putting $100,000 into your building and you're asking for a $25,000 reimbursement, I have no qualms over that, regardless of what it well, I don't say that, but, within bounds, versus, hey, we want you to fund 100% of a $10,000 roof, and that's the only thing we're doing to touch this building. That's
Well,
a
and that-
maintenance to me.
That's very helpful, because I think a lot of the conversations, especially from our building assessment, in talking with Blake and Gentry, we're going to be asking for more larger projects. And, it's going to be a bigger investment for that, rather than just a few minor repairs here and there, so.
Carlton, without, you don't have to disclose the names of the businesses, but are there any business types that are specifically interested in downtown, or is a lot of what you're seeing interstate retailer traffic? I'm sure it is mainly that, but is there some specific interest in historic downtown?
There was some specific interest, and there were mainly restaurants.
Restaurants. Which is great, but guys, none of these buildings were built to be restaurants.
That's why I brought it up.
Absolutely.
You know that kind of investment is what's looking at your downtown, and they're capitalized, but they don't want to waste money on having to, turn a Volkswagen into a Chevrolet.
So along that line of thinking, I'd like to have a discussion specific to the 2025 capital work plan about whether or not there's additional need for parking on the western side of downtown, this more parking lot that's on the list.
Personally, I think at this point, if we put in one more parking lot, at this point, I am all for keeping that option open for the future. I think in the future, we will need it, but I think right now, that's just something we can't overcome in the public perception.
Not until those parking lots they say are using, and I have a question off the kind of beat. Do you get any, complaints or anything from businesses that are not in downtown, that have friends that have businesses in downtown and know that they're getting money for this and that and this and that, and they're not eligible to get it because of just their address?
No, not, honestly, because we extended it to the downtown district, I think mostly whenever people are looking, because anything outside of central business district or downtown district are typical commercial zone properties, and those are a specific type of business, and they're not used to, any of the other pretty things, or, so that it's pretty typical for them to move in. But honestly, They're a real quiet group, yeah.
So the music, I mean, the music place moved from out of the area into here, so I don't know if that was a plus or if that was something they had already planned. But,
We asked them to
Okay.
do that. Yeah, she was here to get a parking variance that she couldn't get for that property. And I was like, hey, there's no parking requirements in downtown. So, yeah, so we were able to recruit that business from commercial to downtown.
I'm excited about the synergy that's gonna happen between that new bakery and the farmer's market.
We're very,
That's a good match.
yeah. So, okay, so
I do
I've
want to back
got,
up Tori's comment, though, earlier today, the fact that with the code enforcement, if we're asking property owners to do something that the city of Terrell is not doing, I think that is a major issue.
oh, no, this is the letter that I want to write in on. Y'all know I am not a fan of the Chapman Building. Like, it drives me insane that I feel like we do ask a lot of our downtown businesses and a lot already.
Something else,
Sims doesn't seem to think it's such a terrible looking building.
It's
He's
okay.
like, it's not. I'm like,
I
There's
think
just
we're on the
so
same page
much.
about that. So the parking lots I've already invested in.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the walls that they're next to. So I have this just grit in me that I don't know that we should wait for those building owners to do anything with those walls. Even Mr. Smith's wall, if he were to put a beautiful mural up there, it's gonna be dwarfed, by the size of that wall. Just like I don't love the Welcome to Terrell mural coming from the west into town, because it's just part of that big wall. So I would like to ask staff, only if the board agrees, to explore ways, whether it's canvassing, billboards, something that covers up that monstrosity.
Yeah.
And, I don't mean to dampen Mr. Smith's idea about the mural, but we were all, not all, but I personally was kind of, one more mural with a person that people are going to wonder about that person versus the opportunity to welcome to Terrell or, brightly color, something, rotating displays like you had, like that's a perfect opportunity for that.
Something where we could announce events on, or something like that.
Electronic.
Yeah.
Didn't you mention electronic?
Yeah.
That's an awful big wall.
Yeah, maybe a portion of it is that, and a portion of it is, I don't know, I think there's creative, maybe it's a very simple white or blue or whatever background with some, not statues, but art, I don't know, I'm not an artist. But you're gonna make-
I will find experts.
You're
You
gonna make
know.
that parking lot look
I will
great,
always go and find experts.
and it's
I
gonna
promise
be
you.
in front of a couple of terrible walls, and I don't, that feels like public space, even though it's private building, and I don't even propose we touch their building.
No,
But if we can do something that
Covers it up.
covers it up.
yeah, no, I'm all
Something-
for that, and I can
Something
do
that
that.
covers it up that does not shake the ground.
Yes,
Okay.
because we were careful to not shake the ground when we pour concrete too. We walked through that, we seriously walked through that the other day. This is where you have to stop doing the compactors, right here. So we're okay. This was really, really good. So what I will do is add some of these notes, update this short-term list. And so I think y'all have your picture at 10. So going from short-term, high-impact options directly into the 2025 budget, I think is a good thing. And then if we have a few minutes, we can start talking about the large capital projects. But I want to make sure that I'm on the right path for 2025. So going to the large sheet, are you interested in participating in the planning cost for that Moore and Rockwall? And really, whenever that engineering line, we could probably do, just name that more concept planning for the entrance bookends. So that we can include more in Rockwall and then the 2 open spaces here. So just having
The
a li-
$10,000 shown in the yellow, is that what you're
the
looking at?
blue.
The blue.
Yeah, so we're down to the 2025 budget request.
You're talking about the 45,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so this sheet in front of us is different than what's on the screen.
Right, yeah, go to your big worksheet.
Yeah, I mean, I know you have to plan first, and I know we don't necessarily have the architectural experts on staff.
So is that a part of the cost, all of the cost?
Good question.
That would be all of the, that would get us all of the, any design work that needed to be done. It could get us full design on green space, whether that be irrigation, roadway, et cetera. So it would get us all design and engineering.
So we would be covering the full cost.
For that one more rock wall.
There on the corner, and then there is an additional 15,000 in there as a little bit of fluff, because if we look at what kind of ideas could we put together for the Moore and Virginia lots. So it's not gonna require full engineering, but there would be some money in there to apply towards signage or whatever we decided to do there.
So for me, 75,000 seems like a lot for planning only. If that 75,000 is going to include the signage we're talking about.
It's 45.
Oh, I'm sorry, 45. I was looking at the screen again. 45, still stand by my comment. I still stand by my, if that is going to include improvements, I think that amount is reasonable. If that is planning only, that seems high to me.
So, I can take it down to just the 30,000, because I know that that is the full engineering and design cost. And, you know, if I need additional, because, so when I put y'all's budget together, that's why whenever I do your year-to-date estimates, you'll notice that we never spend 100%. So when I'm putting these numbers together, I'm basing it on 10% of the capital cost itself for your engineering. The next line, when you look at the consultant fees and services, this is a complete marketing and destination marketing program with updates to our downtown plan. If it's the same consultant, which I hope that it is, I think it's gonna come in less than 150,000. So I always think that there is more than enough in each of these line items, but I can definitely tighten them.
So are y'all wanting to share this cost with somebody? Is that what I'm hearing? Or you're just curious?
Sharing, I like sharing.
Sharing is caring.
I mean, because at the end of the day, that's $195,000 on paper.
Mhm.
And I understand if that's what it costs, but I just think that's a lot of money for this board to foot for planning purposes.
Would, is there a percentage that y'all are comfortable with? And then I'll go out and find the rest of my money.
Explain more what that 150,000.
So we had talked about going out for RFQ for, we want to stay away from the word rebranding, because we're not rebranding Terrell, we're like actually branding Terrell. A lot of the discussion that came out of the Texas Downtown meeting was Terrell is so eclectic, and we have so much, just making sure that we're capturing that in the signage that we use downtown. And this is not a new city logo, it's not a new, it's just, if we're gonna do signage downtown, let's make sure we go ahead and establish it. It's more of a theme, making sure that we have a good theme to move forward with everything that we've done downtown, all of our existing history pieces. And, you know, we're we're introduced to the British idea. I think everybody has like a lot of ideas, and we just need to make sure that before we spend a lot of money on signage and everything else, that we have a good theme. Yeah. And so what you'll have is you'll have signage, and then they'll also help making sure that it's also a destination marketing firm. They'll help with, how do you market your city and your events for outside visitors and new community members? And, we'll have some of those advertising.
There's only so many signs, but are we talking like, could street signs change? They give us a feel for like lighting design? Like, are we going modern? Are we still being traditional? Are we adding color? Do we just want to be black with green landscape? How?
Would they be
Tell me
looking at
more.
our website at all? Because a
good
lot of the comments I hear is, I go to the city website and I can't find what y'all do have. Or I'll tell them, even for the paddock board, go look at the website, and they'll go, where? And I'll even go look and have a hard time trying to find it. So if you go to other cities' websites, it's got a prettier face on, it's got a good facade on it.
A little more user-friendly.
Because I don't mean to be ugly, but signs down it makes your neighborhood, your city look better. But if nobody can go to our website and figure out why they should even come to our city, it doesn't matter what we have downtown.
I think we're curious about the scope of this.
I will be bringing that
Okay.
to y'all.
It's needed. Why not the logo?
You could do a paddock logo, or if we are saying that Paddock wants to recommend a new city logo, this is more like, caring is sharing. I'm gonna let y'all present to Mike Sims. If you are proposing in this plan to update our city logo. And I have never told y'all that before. I have never said, that's a good thing for you to go talk to Mr. Sims about.
Well, I think,
But there's lots of things that could come out of a report like this, and they're all considerations. You're not gonna come out with one thing, but it is supposed to kind of guide you into future decisions.
think about this. Go ahead.
We spend a lot of money on our parks plan, our master plan, and a lot of that had signage and everything in there, and that not one thing has been done on that. So I probably have just a little bit of heartache. I need, present it, let's see what it is, but we already have some underlying things that we've already spent a lot of money on, and not an action has been taken on those.
Okay.
But I do,
I don't have a lot of problem with the city logo, and perhaps, if you do hire the consultant, that they know that this is kind of been established, and how can it work in? Or, maybe just a little adjustment, not a whole new logo. I don't know. I like Terrell America. And, that feels good to me.
good feedback.
I don't know. I hate to see.
This is why I would never be on a logo committee. This is why I go and find.
Because when was
really
that
good
updated, though?
experts.
That hadn't always been that way.
No, it's
When
not
did,
always been the logo.
when did you get Terrell America?
Hal was mayor.
Yeah, because that's pretty recent, because that's,
I'll tell you who, and this is an aside. Nobody that lives in Terrell right now ever started Terrell America. That goes back to, now I can't even think of his name, Jay Champion.
Oh,
He is the one that first said Terrell America. And it
is he really?
He's gotten no credit for it.
Well, glad you said something. May it be reflected in the minutes.
there we go. All right, well, I will work on those first two line items. You'll definitely have more detailed scope for your July meeting, so I will get all of that worked out. Going into the grant reimbursement program, I just carried over your regular It's been your standard 75,000. Your Anderson Griffith Partnership line item will go away.
So we're the lyric tenants.
So your budget's gonna be the 75, and I've just put out there to the side, you've got a 24-month contract
Okay.
with, the lyric tenant.
I
So,
didn't remember it being that long.
yeah, it was 2 years.
20% for
For
2 years.
24 months.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, as long as they're there, that money is already accounted for.
Okay.
The Anderson Griffith Partnership line item goes away. The Development Partnership, so let's talk about this a little bit. So in the orange section, I show in your notes that this is actually 7/1/24 Pena Partnership. If they hit it really, really hard, I'm just budgeting, okay, half of it gets paid before October 1. And then I also have noted that those were the expenditures for Hummingbird that y'all approved whenever they do have a tenant. So that money is just kind of sitting there already accounted for. So when you move over to your 25 budget request, I'm assuming a $750,000 for the remainder of your Pena partnership. And then the rest is budgeted. You know, you've talked to Southland Building. They plan on bringing you an update in July. BMC Community Project, you've dedicated $45,000 for engineering and design, not knowing what else is going to come from that. I just don't know how much money y'all want to carry in that budget moving forward. So these are for your larger development agreements.
Because as I recall, cost of phase 1 of the Southland building was going to be 1.2. Does that seem right? Substantial. And cost of the BMC community facility was going to be, did they know?
No, they didn't. have-
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't have their,
Money to get numbers, basically.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, no.
It just got ripped off.
But she was so positive. She was like, you know, it was demolition I needed done anyway. And I was like, I mean, so there you go. I mean, she was very, very positive about it. She was like, no big deal. We're good.
I think the tricky part is the timing of all of it, because Southland, they say a year from now, but to me that doesn't seem feasible. So for me to have 250,000 roughly in next year's budget, estimating that in the 2026 budget we would have more for them for the completion, like that makes sense to me for our budgeting purposes. But on the off chance that they do move faster than that, then what?
So for just a moment, forget about the timeline and think about the project. If the project costs 1.2 million, you know, if similar to some other projects, they're, you know, they've purchased the building, they've done some shoring up of roof masonry, what level of participation are we willing to consider? We're not committing to anything today, but, I mean, because I think Raylan's, as she's having conversations with them, it either needs to be, I mean, they need to be prepared. We're looking at 50% reimbursement. We're looking at maybe doing a loan structure like we did for Food Hall, because they may or may not be able to do it one way or the other.
And I did speak to him first thing this morning. So they are finalizing their budget and their request. So y'all will hear from them in July. So we can just kind of hold off on this line item and come up with a more firm number towards the end of the summer.
I think generally just for the board, when we're considering equity, we did do a 50% investment into the food hall. So
100%
well,
up front.
yes, but at the end of the day, it is going to be 50% of the cost. And so I think we need to keep that in mind, whether we're looking at reimbursement or whether we are looking at a loan structure. Either way, we don't want to deviate, in my opinion, terribly far from that, because we do want to try to be consistent across the board.
So my question for our new budgeting person is, if we get to that point, can we afford it? Can we afford to be inside $2 million construction loans simultaneously for 5 years? And they'll amortize over that period, but that would be helpful to understand.
Yeah, and she and I are going to meet.
I don't personally love the idea of running multiple loans at one time, personally. I would rather do a reimbursement. But if there's a reason that that makes sense, then I'm open to considering it, but my first instinct is no.
Is that building in our downtown area?
It's downtown district.
Not central business district, but downtown district.
Okay, so more to come on that next month. Also with your park capital improvements, right now I'm just showing the 310. I'm assuming that we can get started in August. We'll spend some money getting the court started. So I've kind of split that up between the 2 fiscal years. And then we'll also add the added costs for Breezy Hill parking, and I'm also getting new pricing for Breezy Hill splash pad. So I'll bring those back to you. Downtown capital improvements, it was the typical 75,000, but as you can tell, my year-to-date estimate for '24 is not going to be very much. So if y'all wanted to come down on that, one of the requests that I have out of this line item this year is Carlton and I met with a very interesting sports tourism company. And we have talked to several companies before where they come in and they do an assessment of your existing fields and your existing facilities, including your schools and colleges, et cetera, and then they tell you what size events and items that you could host here in Terrell. This company takes it a little bit different approach. They do the market research and they tell you what would be a good complex or facility to have in your city. And just like the comment that Carlton made before, we're in a great location. I get to travel the world playing baseball, and I will tell you, and we talked to the consultant, if Terrell doesn't do it, someone here will. And you're talking about this probably being a location for a premier sports facility complex, indoor and outdoor. The total cost for the feasibility plan, they'll help with the location, they'll let us know the number of acreage. The reason that this is important is as we're talking to developers, if we're looking for a 100-acre location, then we're able to work that into our development negotiations whenever people are bringing together and asking for plats. So in the cost share, we're looking at, we're estimating about $100,000, which will give us the full package. It will tell you what you need, the market research for the types of facilities and the types of programming that would do really well in this area. So it's not necessarily the sports that we want to see here, but what would actually bring in your tourism dollars. Whenever we talked to this individual, we talked about how important it was to make sure that we still had that community feature. We feel like, we do really well with our community parks. We don't want something that our community doesn't feel like they're also involved in and they have access to. And how could we also partner with the school district if what we were looking at is building baseball fields or softball fields or soccer, making sure that we get those secondary campuses access to these facilities and partner with them also. So we think it's a great thing for everyone to start considering now, especially with the growth boom. And I was going to propose 1/4 of the cost for Paddock, because ultimately y'all will benefit greatly from sales tax in the area and making sure that, you know, this is essentially going to be, hopefully one day, a new city park. But we are talking massive sports complex.
Who pays for the sports complex?
Listen, there's a lot of options. Probably this would fall within a TERS PID all by itself. You would have maintenance PIDs, you would have capital PIDs, just like TERS numbers 1 through 5. A facility like this would fall within a TERS, which has its own financial structure within it. And you're able to finance those larger capital projects. That's how you were able to do Crossroads. So it's a financial structure that's built within your TERS and PID. So this won't be, gosh, Paddock, we need you to, you know, pay for 50% of a $20 million sports facility, but it'll be something that actually will fall under the TERS and PID. It's just doing the initial legwork to get all those financial pieces in order whenever we're working with developers. Carlton, did I miss anything on that?
A sports complex can be a lot of things. What are y'all looking at?
Well, that's why we don't want to selfishly say what type of events we think would do well in this area. They want to do the market research and tell us what this area is missing and what would be the biggest tourism and visitor impact that we could get here. It may be baseball, it may be soccer, definitely the indoor with volleyball. You know, I mean, there's so many options right now that we don't want to dictate what we think would work in this area.
Similar to what Forney built, where they've got restaurants in the building, they've got, what is that called?
That's the school district,
The OC.
yeah. This would be like Euless 5-star facility, which also has ice skating rink and baseball fields. And I mean, it's just, it's your larger, what were the other examples? Do you remember? Some of them
There's,
were out of state.
The one that we looked at the most is near Birmingham, Alabama. Hotels and restaurants did develop around it. They have a 10,000-seat baseball stadium there that is used for a AAA minor league team, that we're not proposing that, even though it could happen, we're not proposing that here. But the agreement between the school district, the city, and this company is that their high school team gets to use that. And so it's certainly an idea worth considering. The balance of other than the 25% that she's asking from you will come from CVB money and some from the city, so to fund this. But I really think that this is a really good long play. I mean, this isn't an immediate deal. The other thing about this company is they manage it and run it. We don't have to,
That was
yeah,
my other question is, who
yeah,
on
they
city
manage it
staff
and
is
run
gonna
it.
take care of this thing?
Yeah, no, they have the experts to do the fields, and they create the tournament play. They hire the unbiased, about, being an ex-official myself, said, man, where are you gonna find enough baseball umpires for a 100-team tournament over a week? And they said, oh, we take care of that. Y'all don't have to worry about that. We bring them in.
Did they approach us or we approached them?
They approached us right, I told you 127 now you don't know of 126, so this is one of them out there, so.
Are they based in Texas?
The person that came to us is in Fort Worth. I don't know where, I don't remember where they were based in. I don't remember.
25,000 is the 25% you're looking. It's a $100,000 ask.
I don't think $100,000 for that big a project is.
Well, it's $100,000 for the research.
Right,
as to
for
what
the
it would be.
research.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anything
So is
about
there an
research.
income level that's
It
reimbursed
doesn't
back,
say.
percentage that they make over these tournaments come back to the city?
It's in hotel.
Yeah, it does. I mean, look at it this way, the city would pay there's a management fee. And then CVB money, all the tax money coming back would come back to the city, yeah.
I don't know, you know,
It's an exciting possibility.
it is.
I think it's where, when you look at developments and all of the potential developments in the area, if we're gonna do it, we better have a plan for it.
It's not, you
There
know, the
are
risk
tens
is, go
of
ahead.
thousands of acres available that developers are looking at. And when you start developing a major project, you go to them and say, this is pretty cool. Your development's really nice. What if you donated, of your 4,000 acres, what if you donated 100 for this? And they put it in. So,
I know we spent a lot of money on a convention center study, and I know where we are on that. So does this feel different?
it does I'm way out of the driving everywhere. Of course, I used to go everywhere for competitive cheer competitions, a little different. I know that Raylan's all over the country with baseball. I know a lot of parents that are. This does feel a little different. I mean, I really believe that we are in a position that we would draw tournaments of some kind from, a 5 to 7 state area. It's there. I mean, the XL Center thought that they could do they're full all the time, don't get me wrong. They still have a lot of tournaments, but, yeah, but they're limited, and this would take that lid off of any limitations. Bryan College Station just built one. This company just put one there, so you might look at their center. Do you know where, aren't they close to Texas A&M? I'm sorry, I didn't
They
know.
are,
All
and
right.
what a vastly different community that is than ours.
I'm just saying, look at the quality of work they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Euless.
Most of these are,
Different than Terrell, too.
what's that? I'm sorry.
Euless feels different in,
It's it's more inner city than, when I say inner city, I don't mean, it's not, we're still considered a rural community, fastly not becoming one of those, but we're still considered that.
Prosper has, Salina has, there's a lot of money being put into, Sarah knows, anyway, I do not want to cut y'all off because this is great conversation. We made it. We're about an hour and 45 minutes in. I hope that this was beneficial to y'all because it was to me. I will come back with some updates in July, but y'all really have to go get your picture taken. And I really have to go to Fort Worth to to sit at a baseball field. So speaking of sports tourism, I'm going to go spend money in Fort Worth today. But so we got as far down as the park capital improvements, talked a little bit about sports tourism, and everything underneath that, your landscape, your parking lot, all of that goes away. And so I think we'll be at a very good starting point for our July budget discussions, and we should have it wrapped up.
Could we get these out a little bit earlier for the July discussion, just so we have some time to look it over before we come in?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. If y'all made good notes on your packet, that would be good, or you can leave them with me or whatever, but I just. Yes, ma'am.
meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Y'all